Well, hi everybody. Great pleasure to once again have Mark Hoddinott with me, with his Crivets shirt on. If you say hi.
Hello, how's everyone?
Look at that.
Bit dusty, I'm sorry.
We don't need to guess where you've been then.
No, yes, I had a lovely day yesterday. I drove up to Crivets, which is, a mountainous area or wooded area north of Green Bay. It's about, from where I am, it's about 2 hour drive. And that's where Allan Avery goes every weekend, actually for 4 days. So I went up there with Sandra Greenman and spent the day with him, which is always quite enlightening. I took a few photos, which I'll show you in a little bit as well.
Excellent.
And you can see how Allan is. He's a good storyteller, that's for sure. So.
All right, good. Well, you've certainly been clocking up the miles, haven't you?
I have.
And you'll be heading back to Australia soon, hopefully with a dude.
Yeah. I go back on Monday.
Yep.
So I did also go down and see Stephen on Thursday. So that was 2 days ago, and spent the day or 4 hours with him.
I've got some questions about that. I'll come to that later.
Okay. And today, later this morning, it's 8 o'clock or something like that, 8:15 here.
Yep.
Later on this morning, mid-morning, going back down to Warpond. I'll be taking Dolores, Steve's mum, down, and Sandra Greenman, and we'll go down and see Stephen today as well, which will be the last time for me for this visit anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay, well, so I've got a couple of questions about that, if you don't mind.
First
of all, though, I've got some rather distressing news concerning our mutual friend.
Oh, who's that?
Yes, the dude himself.
Oh,
well,
Bigfoot.
Yes, he was busy getting all his stuff ready for bringing to Australia with him, getting his suitcase all organised, and he realised that his Dr. Pepper T-shirt was smelling a bit because he'd worn it on a few hot days, you know. So of course he decided to put it in the wash.
Oh,
okay, and he hung it out to dry because it was a nice sunny evening. Unfortunately, because he was so busy messing about with this birth certificate and his passport and everything, he forgot to bring the T-shirt in, and it was left out overnight.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the night, apparently disaster struck.
Oh, gonna get stolen.
Cruel and heartless people crept up and stole the clothes pegs off the clothesline.
Stole the clothes pegs. What about his shirt?
Oh, his shirt was fine.
That'd be him without that Dr. Pepper T-shirt would be like, walking around naked, right? So poor man.
Yeah, just a question.
Yes.
Why have you been visiting?
Wisconsin,
yes, no. A person who is so evil, he is the most dangerous person ever to enter Judge Willis's courtroom. A convicted rapist and murderer.
Yes.
What's a good gentleman like you visiting this evil person? I mean, surely he must have been shackled in like some irons, and he came out, all sort of evil and everything. What are you doing, spending time with this psychopath?
Yeah, I don't know. There's obviously something wrong with me, right? So, I know it's just it's hard to even match those sorts of descriptions we've been told by the courts and others to the man Stephen. He's a gentle soul, and he's a very caring and uncomplicated person. And to attribute such atrocities to him is just, belies logic, and it's just ridiculous. And when you go and see him and talk to him and understand who he is, and he doesn't put on any charade. He's not someone trying to be nice for nice sake. That's who he is. He's a nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I remember a quote, not for Stephen, but for Brendan, that Barbara, Brendan's mum, made on several occasions, and that was referring to his federal court appeals and Supreme Court appeals. Barbara would say, if they could only just meet him, referring to Brendan, they would see who he is, And it's true with Stephen, when you see and meet Stephen, you get not a different impression, because I always thought he would. You would get the idea of who he really was. You get not a different impression.
Sorry, it's me. It's me. Sorry, hold on a sec.
Yeah.
I thought I'd got it muted. Apologies for that. Sorry.
That's all right. I could hear myself about 3 minutes later. But, it's not good. Not good. But anyway, yeah, so Stephen, when you see Stephen and you meet him and you understand him, you suddenly go, oh my God, why is this guy here? Yeah. Right? I mean, we know the reason why he's there. It's a rhetorical question, but the person demonstrates the reality of what we know are the facts of this matter. And so, I'm seeing him because, as Stacey would say, could be you, could be me, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the way I look at it. So, and as I get it personally, I feel enriched by having a friendship with Stephen, and in the sense of understanding his plight and what he's going through. So, yeah.
I've just finished watching watched the last one last night of the episodes of another really good Netflix series, Mind Hunters.
Ah, yes, I haven't seen that, but I've heard
absolutely brilliant. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Very disappointed that it seems as if Holden Ford and his girlfriend, who was very smart, they don't seem to be together anymore. I don't know how much of it is based on true facts. In the sense that the characters, if that was their real names, Holden and Tench. But what I found most interesting was, the fact that, yes, we do know that these guys did go around and interview these killers to find out what made them tick. I don't recall any of the FBI ever going to interview Stephen Avery to say, what made you do it? Because that would be a really interesting. I once put that what if Stephen wanted to somehow to save Brendan leading up to the trials by saying, look, okay, I did do it, but leave Brendan out of it. He had nothing to do with it. The big problem for Steve then would be explain, well, how did you do it? How did you murder her? Either in your garage or your trailer? And there's no evidence of her whatsoever. You stabbed her and you did all this, throat cutting and punched her and cut her hair.
But as you know, Paul, evidence doesn't matter. Confessions stand on their own in Wisconsin.
No.
Well, certainly in this case, anyway. So they'd be grateful for the admission. They didn't. Whether there's any evidence corroborating the statements, is irrelevant. So.
Well, yes. but there again, hold on a second. They've got a government official over there in Wisconsin, in Manitowoc. He must be a former Aussie. Because you know how when you meet an Aussie, all Aussies are opticians. Because every time they go, "G'day."
G'day, yeah.
G'day. Right. Well, this politician in Manitowoc knows and has stated in the press that Steve must be guilty because he could tell purely by the look in his eyes.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh,
my
God.
But do you know what the best of it is? Yeah, people, you know, because he's a politician, people will pick up on that and say, "Oh well, look, Jim Bray says he's guilty. He must be guilty." You've got the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department, Jean Couchet when he was still alive, Peterson saying, "Well, we think he actually did the attack on Penny Bernstein. We don't accept that that Gregory Allen did it." And rather interesting to say, you know, well, you know, has DNA evidence ever been planted before? I thought that was most prophetic by Eugene. I did like his line there.
Yeah, I know. I mean, seriously, you kind of just think about all those sorts of things you're referring to and the details of this case and say, is this real? Is this stuff real?
Yeah.
It's just bizarre. It's just seriously bizarre. And if it wasn't for the pain and suffering of other people as a consequence of that, you'd kind of have a little joke about it, right?
Yeah.
But you know, they're just anyway. I guess in truth, you know, all these things are going to come to a head. I would say fairly soon, and the stupidity and the lies and the deceit and the dishonesty is all going to be, if not already revealed, be clearly revealed in a court of law. So, yeah.
I mean, it's. I'm still getting one or two of these guilters sending me messages. One goes by the name of the inventor of the evolution theory, or the discoverer, if you like, of the theory of evolution. And you know, it was saying that when you compare your alternative narrative, it actually matches the state's. And I'm thinking, what on earth are you on about? Nothing that the state ever claimed in this case matches the evidence. And Zellner has completely and utterly destroyed the case for the state. They've nothing to go on whatsoever now. In fact,
guilt is a. You know, I don't engage much with them at all.
No.
I'd be happy to if they could give me some arguable evidence that made sense, because all I see is a group of people. I don't know who they are, of course, but a group of people who don't want to admit that they're wrong. So they come up with this fanciful stuff, which is crazy stuff, to try to sustain their arguments. And whenever you ask them some questions, say, okay, tell me why you think that, they all just jump back to some one-line statements. Well, he's guilty because the jury said he was guilty, or he's guilty because, I don't know, the police caught him or something. They have no arguable position that actually gives you some comfort in their thoughts, comfort in the sense of being valid. And therefore, they get boring. I don't mean that as individuals. I don't know them, obviously, but in terms of their arguments, they're boring because they haven't got anything to say that is meaningful. I'm not interested in speculation either on the innocent side or the guilty side. I'm interested in the facts, and they can't produce anything that gives weight to what they're trying to say, and that's why they're boring. So,
yeah, I must admit, I'm left struggling to decide whether it's because some of them feel that it's simply unpatriotic to go against the state and what the prosecutors have said. For others, it's a fact that they do have an interest in there, so they've got this interest in the conviction being maintained. I'm sure that there are some people in Manitowoc with multiple accounts going around. And trying to turn the whole case the way that Ken Kratz did, as some sort of publicity contest, and that's the strangest thing, because when it comes to the publicity contest, Zellner's doing a far better job. But it beggars my belief that they don't realise that if you've got something substantial against Stephen Avery, go to Kathleen Zellner. Tell her. If she then turns around and says, look, you lot, I'm really sorry, I've got it wrong, he's guilty, then we could all go home.
Yeah.
But their line of attack is to try and somehow coerce us into thinking that somehow we've got it wrong, and I just don't understand where their logic is coming from.
Well, I don't think there is logic to it, Paul.
Yeah.
I do believe what you said just a moment ago, and that is a lot of people, understandably, don't want to believe their law enforcement agencies are, or some people, not all of them, in those agencies are corrupt and that they've done bad things, and so they don't want to admit that to themselves that that's true, or that their opinions may be wrong, and they stick by this to almost out of pride, misplaced pride. There is undoubtedly a group of people within the so-called guilters groups that have, as you say, have a vested interest, and they're more directly involved, and they're pretending to be people they're not. I get how that happens, but it just doesn't make it true, just because that's their motive. And so, Kathleen Zellner, it's a pity that the police should take a leaf out of Kathleen Zellner's book, because everything that she does is on the table for everyone to see and examine. She doesn't have any secretive stuff. She's trying to prove, in a sense, by default, Stephen's innocence, but she's trying to prove that the state's arguments and the state's testing and the state's science has got validity attached to it. She hasn't been able to. She hasn't been able to independently sustain any of the arguments that they put forward, that is, the state put forward in Stephen's trial, at all. And as we all know, she says right at the beginning, if you're guilty, I'm going to find out, right? And she can't find it out. Not only that now, of course, not only has she been unable to find direct evidence that supports the state's case, she's found, multitude of evidence that supports the opposite. Evidence that shows Stephen's innocence. And if the state had been on the table, above the table, and displaying everything and doing a proper and thorough investigation of everyone, not just Stephen, I'm sure the true perpetrator of this crime would have been discovered and being convicted appropriately. So that we run into this very difficult and, I think, ultimately sad outcome, that it's really possible that, notwithstanding Stephen's innocence and release, that the chances of them lawfully convicting someone for the crime is vastly diminished.
Yes.
And that's extremely unfair for the Halbach family. But I think that's a real possibility, put it that way, that we will never actually get a conviction of the true perpetrator.
Yeah, I must admit, when I watched Making a Murder the first time, series 1, it did occur to me that it was likely that, or it seemed at the time that it was likely that she'd either met with an accident across at the Zippers, because of some of the stuff that George Zipper was saying about his dogs would have maybe attacked somebody, or he would shoot a trespasser, and all this kind of stuff. And then the other thing was, well, did she actually make it back home for 3 o'clock for whatever this appointment was, this party to go around to her mum's house, and that's when Ryan attacked her. The one thing that we've now got in series 2, episodes 2, is that the crime seems to have been brought back towards the salvage yard. So on that one issue, I think it's fair enough that they did thoroughly investigate the salvage yard, but they found that all this evidence of Teresa was all in this. Was it the Hoddinott quarry and the Manitowoc quarry?
Yes.
But then it was all a case of just try and focus it on Steve, and it's just ridiculous.
And the other thing is that all that evidence was accumulated, if I can use that word, at a time where the police had sole possession of that whole property. It wasn't found in the early stages; it was found days later. And you could reasonably argue that as we would argue, that evidence was was created in an environment where they had sole possession of that property. And so you have the salvage yard, you have next to that the Hoddinott quarry, which sort of runs on the eastern side and it's slightly on the southern side of the salvage yard. And then on further south, but adjoining, you have the Manitowoc quarry. They're just, visually, you think it's all one big chunk of land. But it's clear, it seems to me pretty clear that some bad stuff happened in that part of the region, off Avery salvage yard, but along Cuss, or at the end of Cuss Road, and then subsequently down through the quarry to the Manitowoc quarry side. So, I mean, I don't know for certain, but on a clear, cool examination of the facts, it seems to me that Teresa has met her fate, sadly, in that area, and all the evidence points that way, including those of the dogs, right, who are very interested in all those areas, and they're not at all interested in the Avery salvage yard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to mention one thing about two of the guilters that we regularly encounter as a result of following Ericose. And it did occur to me the other day that in the same way that I often say that I wish I'd have maybe been a little bit more nicer, if you like, to Sheriff Herman, and he might still have he might have continued to hold conversations with me, but it got to the point where it was quite clear that we weren't getting anywhere, and I think perhaps when he started to realise that the noose was starting to tighten, that's when he was definitely told no more speaking. I wonder about the two guilters that we know quite well. If they're just trying to sort of stay in with us by being reasonably pleasant and polite, but I still don't get what they're hoping to gain from it. Are they really thinking that there's any one of us out there that would change our minds?
I'll change my mind if you can produce the evidence that makes that so.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
what she's done. Yeah, sorry.
I've met Stephen and I've met their family and they're nice people. But if someone would turn around and give me unequivocal evidence that is sustainable about their guilt, well, then I would change my mind. But I'm not a stupid person. I think of all the facts. I look at all the evidence and I go, this is just not valid. And I think the people you're referring to are just either they're just deliberately argumentative, or they just don't want to admit they're wrong. And it's not a weakness to admit you're wrong. In fact, it's the opposite. It's a strength to admit you're wrong, especially in the eyes of all the evidence that's coming forward. Anyway, people are entitled to be who they are, but it's pretty clear to me. I have no doubt about this matter at all, none whatsoever. And like you and thousands of others, we're spending a lot of time on this, not because we're crazy. It's just that we're trying to pursue justice, and that's why we do it. So,
that's right. We're basically what we're trying to do is to help. I suppose help. Work with KZ. I nearly said the American version, KZ, which I hate. Work with KZ and try and make as much noise, as much awareness about this case as possible, because it's Making a Murder is the #1 Netflix series. It's far and away the biggest. It's the interest it's created throughout the world, and particularly, of course, in the English-speaking countries, America, Canada, UK and Ireland, Australia. But then, we've even got your French, your Belgians, your Dutch, your Scandinavians, lots of Europe is also watching this with great interest. Anyway,
because we can all connect that this could
yeah,
have easily been a set of circumstances that could happen to any of us if the law enforcement were so inclined to frame somebody.
absolutely.
And that's why we have this special interest in this case, because we can see ourselves in that same position, or potentially anyway. So, yeah.
Moving on. One of the things that Eric Jose said was maybe some people could find out a little bit more about the candidates for the forthcoming elections in Wisconsin. There's a vacancy for the Wisconsin Supreme Court, which has been made because somebody, Abrahamson, is retiring.
I'm not sure what that circumstance is, but
yeah,
you're right.
I think at the moment it works out that within the Supreme Court of Wisconsin, I find it very odd, by the way, that judges are political. That you've got Republican judges and you've got Democrat judges. For me, that seems very, very odd. We certainly don't in the UK have judges that align themselves with any political party. Do they have that in Australia?
No. In
the
fact,
potential for corruption.
Yes, I mean, I'm sure it's the same in the UK. Our judges are appointed hopefully based on merit. They're certainly not voted on by the population. And you might say, well, that's fraught with danger as well. But there's such a scrutiny of that process in terms of the process that I can't think of any controversy in my country about the appointment of judges. But I do find it a little odd because I'm here in Wisconsin at the moment, and this election, which is coming up, I think on April the 2nd, a Tuesday, funnily enough, is you're now seeing the candidates on television promoting themselves, and to see a Supreme Court justice, or potentially so, promoting themselves, I find it a little odd. When their primary role is to interpret the law, the statute and common law, and in some sense make law. They make law by virtue of their decisions and through case law. But to see them promoting themselves, I'll be the best judge you can have because of blah 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 blah. And I have these people supporting me and blah, blah, blah. I think, hang on a minute, this sounds very self-interested, which clearly it is. But you don't really want to hear that type of rhetoric coming from a judge. You want to have a sense that it doesn't matter who you are or what your background is, that you're going to be treated fairly by the law, rather than a judge being beholden to some interest group that may be supporting them. So.
Exactly. I mean, you want them to qualify as being the best candidate for the job, not because of their advertising campaign. It should be because they are the best person for the job.
And that should enable them, or should entail them, being sufficient independent mind. It matters not what case or person or situation they're reviewing or are judging, that they'll give it their best independent, lawful analysis. They're not going to be persuaded by politics or cultural differences or ethnocentric or economic issues. They're just going to be judged on the law, what's fair. That's what I'd like to think any judge would do, let alone one at the Supreme Court level. And as best I can tell, by the way, I'm not a voter, obviously, here.
Me neither.
The two. Yeah, exactly. The two candidates are Hagedorn, I think, and Neubauer. I don't mind saying to you that it seems to me that the best outcome from what I'm hearing and reading and observing would be with Neubauer. But, I don't know really, and I'm not trying to persuade anyone's voting, but just listening to the candidates and what they have to say and looking at their backgrounds.
Yep.
The Nubal candidacy seems to be the one that would probably be in my view, in the best interest of the state of Wisconsin. So,
yes, it is interesting, isn't it? Because some people will inevitably vote for the judge based on party politics.
Of course,
and
that's why they advertise, right? That's why they get out there.
Yeah, so, you know how Travis Williams' son,
the
Williams' son, yes.
Yeah.
You know how he loves a Capaldi analogy.
Oh yeah.
Well,
the one that's attributable to me. You mean?
All of them are attributable to you for some reason. No, there was the. I was hoping that the dude was going to join us. I suspected that he wasn't because it's, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning is a bit much, for a Californian. So I don't.
He was up late last night.
Yeah, but I was going to ask him. We'll transfer it to you then. Okay, you've got a choice. You're gonna invest in a new car. Okay.
Yeah.
What make of car would you like?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't really care what the make is, as long as it does the job.
Well, you've got a choice. It's either Ford or Chevrolet.
Ford or Chevrolet.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I know you're a car person, Paul. So,
yeah. Okay.
It doesn't. Again, you mean I have to choose? Do I?
Yeah. Choose one.
I'm brand unaware when it comes to motor vehicles, so I'm probably going to choose the brand that's probably more familiar to me,
which will be the Ford.
Yes.
In correct. Australia, yeah. Okay, and you've got a choice of 2 colours, either pink or yellow.
Oh, I think I have to go yellow.
Oh well, I'm sorry, you're with the Chevrolet now.
Oh,
because the Ford's in pink and the Chevrolet is in yellow.
Oh, so okay. Again?
So
Chevrolet then.
Chevrolet. Okay. Now you've got a choice. It's either a manual gearbox or an automatic gearbox. Which would you prefer?
Don't really mind, but probably automatic.
Right, you're sticking with the Chevrolet, okay? And and you can either have left-hand drive or right-hand drive.
Oh, well, if that's the case, I think I'll have to go right-hand drive. It would be better for me.
Well, you're back with the Ford now. Okay. Right, body shape. Okay, you can either have a pickup, or three-door coupe.
Pickup.
You're back to the Chevrolet. Okay. You've got a choice of a 1.1 litre or an 8.3 litre.
Oh my God!
Think of the difference in power there.
Yeah, I know, especially if I've got a pickup. Not going to pick up much with a 1.1 litre. Either seems pretty extreme, so I think I'd probably go for the 8 litre one, which seems like a tank.
So you're now back at the Ford. Okay. You can either have disc brakes or drum brakes.
Have I got you? It suddenly went very quiet. I can't see you, Paul. I can see your picture, but I can't see you. I think I might have lost you.
I think it is. Yep. Coming back on.
Quick hold.
Yeah.
What time is it over there?
Hello
There
there.
we are.
Oh, you've got the
back.
link. Oh, that's excellent, excellent.
Hey, Eunice. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. You're looking well?
Well, Paul's got the headphones in, so I can't hear what you're saying.
I'm saying how lovely you look this evening.
Fine.
So
I'm just heading out to go and get my parents because they're going across to the neighbours to watch the Scotland-England rugby game this afternoon.
that could be good.
Yeah, I know, but they've got the Ireland game first.
Oh, yeah. It was Ireland Wales just now, is it?
Yeah.
Just come. Well, hurry up then. Hurry up then. And this guy needs to get off as well. He's not had his breakfast yet.
Are you all ready to see him again?
If that's possible, I'm trying my best to get ready.
Yeah, well, you know what? I've got all the party going, all the party links and stuff while he's away. You know, I've got folk coming every night, and we're going to be really rocking it because he's away.
Yeah, it's like you having a holiday, right?
Absolutely.
Off you go. Off you go.
Bye. Take care, mate.
Bye. You too.
We'll just quickly jump straight back in, and I'll just keep you another 10 minutes. Okay.
No worries, mate. No worries. I'm gonna
here we go then.
Okay.
I think we were going live, actually. I think that was live. So.
All right, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it does say live on my screen.
Yes.
Hey, while I remember, I wanted to show you some pictures.
Yes. And then we've got to decide on this car because I think the problem is my end. It's because, as Eric Ozee put it, we've got some weather here in the borders.
I know. Oh dear, poor fella.
he was on about directions the other day, and he was saying, I think it's west of here or east of here, or he hasn't got a Scooby about the planet that we live on. Geography is just not a subject of his.
I remember him saying something about that, and I thought, no, he doesn't realise which is left and right here on this one. So
yeah. It was something to do with where you were going. Oh, that's right. Yeah, you were going to be going west to or you were going to go east to whatever.
One of the followers, I forget the person's name, wanted me to come to Michigan before I went home.
Oh, that was it. Yes.
And I said, "Oh, I'm going the other direction."
Yeah, he thought it was going west to Michigan.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. The clue is that Wisconsin, the sort of eastern side is where Manitowoc is, and that's on Lake Michigan.
Yeah, correct.
Michigan itself can't be the other side of Wisconsin.
No,
but anyway,
exactly.
Yeah, his geography skills are legendary, aren't they?
Hey, how about you finish the car story? Because otherwise...
Yes. So yes. So basically, what I was saying was the fact that it's like you can't get the ideal car. You have to pick and choose, and it's a bit like party politics for me. I don't know about you, but I mean, I've been voting now for 40 years. You know, in our sort of general elections, and we have elections here in Scotland, and I've because of the issues raised, I've had to range from being conservative to the Liberals to even to the Scottish Socialist Worker Party. It is quite difficult, isn't it, with politics, because you can't choose the one that's the best one. You can't cherry pick, can you? Your policies. You're stuck with what that party stands for. Is really what I was trying to say.
Yes, I'm a bit like you, Paul. I don't align myself with any political party.
Yeah.
I align myself with people that have good ideas,
yeah,
the interests of the nation at heart. And sometimes that means you switch around a bit, and also you vote for minor parties for some as well. because they, mine it's major parties' degree of policy. I put it that way. So yeah, I think it's. I don't mean this unkindly, but it's kind of intellectually lazy just to vote for a party without understanding what they stand for.
Yeah.
And then at the very top of the tree, whether it's the Prime Minister in the case of the UK and Australia, or the President in the case of the US, I want to feel there's a leader that I feel proud about, and who even though they mightn't have all your support, but they have the nation's best interest at heart, and they have a vision for the country. It's important that leaders have vision, and they can take a country to another level. And if they don't have that, if they're just hacks or they're just there for self-interest, I lose faith in them very quickly. Yeah.
No, it was just interesting that, as you say, there are these two candidates putting themselves forward, and I must apologise. I thought, because I heard that Brian Hagedorn was going to be a particularly good thing for Steve if Steve ended up in front of him, but it seems it's as if it was Paul Riley that's the judge in the Wisconsin District 2 that sent the case back, or the issues with the bones back to Angie to deal with, and he seems to be a decent judge. Going forward, whichever one of those two ends up being at the Supreme Court, I've spoken to one or two people close to the case, and yes, that it does seem to be that for them, shall we say, Brian Hagedorn would not be their number one choice, and I think partly because it would tip the balance. At the moment, the balance is something like 4-3 Republican Democrat within the judges, and it would shift it to 5-2. I think that's what they say.
And don't you find it sort of counterintuitive to have to worry about politics in judging? Like, you want people in that role to be judging on the merits, not based on political preference. So, that's why I think that politicization of the judiciary is unhealthy, very unhealthy.
Not just judges, but your district attorneys, even your sheriffs.
Yeah.
We had obviously we had Wiegert and Hebel competing for one another. And was it not a case that they were both competing to be the representative of that particular party?
Correct. That's my understanding. Yes.
Yeah. Whereas in Manitowoc itself, the new guy, Hartwig, Dan Hartwig, I think he was. There was nobody else wanting to go forward for the job. Maybe a bit of a poison chalice there for anybody wanting to take on the job of sheriff of Manitowoc.
I think that's true.
Sorry, you were going to say you've got some photos that you wanted to see us, and
I do. Hey, by the way, did we finish the car story? I'm not sure we did.
It was it was. Well, I think we've ended up that most people in the chat decided that they wanted a pink Toyota, so neither of us get our wish.
All right. So I've got to give you. I'm going to show you a picture. This is pursuant to my lovely day yesterday with Allan Avery, who's quite the character, very funny man. Anyway, I drove up to Crivets. It's heavily covered in snow. Heavily covered. Snow banks are almost as high as the car when you're driving along. It's like being in a tunnel of snow. Anyway, he said, I want to take you out for a burger, right? So, you've got to just picture this. This is like a heavily wooded area. So we drive down all these snowy roads and head to this little bar, this tavern by a frozen lake with all the pickups parked outside, and undoubtedly, I didn't really check, but probably gun racks in the back of the cars, all that stuff. And you walk inside this bar, it's a bit dark and full of bearded men with big coats on, and lots of noise, drinking beer and generally having a good time. And so did we, and we met people and had a nice time there. But I noticed a sign on the wall that I took a photo of, and so I'm going to try to show you this sign. Hopefully I know. Hopefully, it'll be readable.
Yep.
I'm going to hold it up here.
Yep.
Can you see that?
If I shut up, what I need to do is I need to mute myself so that only you can be heard.
Oh,
Hold on
okay.
a sec. Eric Jose will be cheering at this point. He will go in apoplectic.
So okay, so what's one of the nicknames for people from Wisconsin, because they're famous for their cheese, are cheeseheads, and they have all sorts of funny hats and funny things all associated with cheese. So this sign was on the wall that said, "What separates the cheeseheads from the shitheads?" Excuse the expression. The state line is the state line, which means everyone else, I guess. Everyone else. I'm not sure what happened just then. Oh, I know why. Here we go. Yeah, so I thought that was quite amusing and very typically Wisconsin. In other words, they're very state loyal. Okay, you can put your sound back on, Paulie.
No worries, no worries. Yes, I believe that because of following Mr. Behrens, I know for a fact that the two big rivalries are the Packers versus the Bears, the Chicago Bears. Hence the expression "Go Packers" and "F the Bears." And the other thing that he likes to make fun of are the number of Super Bowl wins by the Minnesota Vikings.
All right, which is what? How many?
None.
Yeah, right.
They've never won the Super Bowl.
All right.
And at one time they were going through a really, really bad patch, weren't they?
Yeah.
And of course,
I was just going to say, this is a photo. Sorry if it's not very clear, but this is a photo I took with Allan and myself.
With his beer.
With a beer. And so actually you can tell it's from my phone, so it's a bit glary. I'm just going to, and here's a close-up of Allan. He's looking pretty good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't have his beard on, which always makes him look a bit older, because it's grey. So, but he's looking very well. And
yep.
I'll tell you that I actually have a recording of this, but I'm not going to risk the technology that it might go wrong. I'll just tell you the story. I was sitting at his kitchen table. We're all probably familiar with his kitchen table at Crivets. There's been plenty of photos of that, and in the background is the oven, which we're also pretty familiar with as that funny interchange of between he and Dolores in the last thing. Because Alan's really hard of hearing, so you've got to really work hard to speak to him. You got to get up close. So anyway, we're sitting at this table, and there's these little packets of envelopes on the table, and I go, "So what's this, Allan?" And he goes, in his Wisconsin accent, "Well, that's just a bunch of crap, And what it turns out to be is that some years ago, for many years, Allan and Dolores had insurance policies with this insurance company, and they cancelled on it. Cancel the policies on them when they turned age 65, which is obviously very common in insurers. They don't want to insure you beyond age 65. And Allan was sort of berating the fact that, we've got no damn anything out of that. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. No son of a whatevers, And so I said, well, yeah, okay. So what's the story about these packages? He says, well, they keep sending me catalogs about insurance. And they... So what? And they have, stuff where you can send in a replied paid envelope information back, if you're interested in something. So what he does, he collects all those replied paid envelopes. He cuts up just scraps of paper, whether they're old catalogs, cuts them up with his scissors, shoves them in the replied paid envelopes, and posts them back. And I said, why do you do that? He says, I want them to pay that postage, he says. So, and then he brings out this little book, like a calendar diary thing. He says, last year I sent back 174 of these things, and this year I've done 54 already. I got another 6 on the table there, So it's like the Avery revenge of the insurance company. So he just loads it up with rubbish, right? Nothing in there. Just cuts stuff up, put them in the envelope, licks it, seals it, pops it in the mailbox, just so the insurance company has to pay the post office the replied paid postage charge.
just because of annoying him. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny.
What was particularly interesting was when Dolores was trying to get that stove to work.
Yeah, I know.
And she calls Alan, and she accuses Alan of this stove being his stove. How'd you get your stove to work?
And I do actually have a picture of that stove. I'm not sure whether I actually have it handy, but I took it because I thought, oh, that'll be handy to have. So yeah, she's trying to get the stove to work. Alan's hard of hearing. She goes, what? Anyway, it's like this conversation going on with no understanding, and he comes over to the stove, as you might remember in the documentary. Which one of these works? You want it stirred? You want this stirred? It's good. Tastes good.
He says, I'm not standing here stirring this.
That's funny. They're a wonderful couple, actually. They're just really lovely. So
yeah.
they have their little communication challenges, but it's good. So yeah.
Listen, mate, you haven't had your breakfast yet.
No, I haven't.
It's now 9 o'clock in the morning, Manitou time. You'll miss breakfast if you don't get down to breakfast.
Oh no, they don't. It's not a typical, weekend breakfast finishes at 11 or anything. So you got to be down there, get your stuff quick. So yeah. Yep.
And then enjoy your trip down to Warpine again.
Warpine, yeah. I'm going down there in an hour or two. So yeah.
And then is it Sunday you fly out, or?
No, Monday I go. Sunday I'm not 100% sure exactly what I'm doing tomorrow. I have a couple of options, but Monday I leave Green Bay in the afternoon. So hopefully I run into some other fella in Los Angeles. If he doesn't turn up, I know he didn't get his passport. So that'll be interesting. So
yeah, it just beggars belief. He's on about the fact that it's stressful for him.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, come on.
Can you imagine what he'll be like on the plane, right? Seriously. He'll be definitely wanting a few Dr. Peppers either on the plane or before he gets on. So yeah,
it's something like an 11-hour flight. I'm sure that you've made sure that you've got seats at different ends of the aircraft.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. It might be a challenging journey if I didn't, right? So yeah, should be good though.
I'm gonna say, it's going to be interesting to see what he makes of Australia, having never been there before. I mean, I've never been to Australia, but I know far, far more about Australia, Australians, the culture, and everything. And for him, it'll be just such a shock, won't it?
Yeah, it'll be entertaining for us just to watch and enjoy it.
It will. I mean, I would imagine he'll be one of these really appalling tourists that expects everything to be in a foreign country to be exactly as it is for him at home.
Oh yeah.
He'll not get his head around half of what's going on. And can you imagine trying to explain to him about Aussie rules football?
Oh God. Oh dear. Some things don't bear thinking of. You're just better off dealing with them at the time.
Can you imagine having to try and explain the rules of cricket to him? It would be quicker to explain making a murder.
Oh God,
the rules of cricket, wouldn't it?
Yeah, as I say, I think it'll just be pure entertainment for us to just watch him enjoy it there. And doing live crosses from the Sydney Opera House or the MCG or somewhere like that to his team back here in the United States, so and around the world, of course. So that'll be fun. That'll be a lot of fun. So.
Yeah, what's going to be really great, of course, is to meet all the other supporters. When I went to Amsterdam, I didn't know any of the people there because Georgina wasn't well at the time, and so didn't know anybody then. When I went up to even when I went to Edinburgh, of course, to see Steve Drizzen and Laura Nyrider, I didn't meet anybody there that I know through, through obviously through Erekose mainly. What's going to be interesting is, and again, when I first went to see Dean Strang and Jerry Buting in Edinburgh at the Usher Hall, I hadn't even started doing any kind of YouTube videos myself. So, all I got was a T-shirt, and I knew quite a lot about the case. And I think the show was delayed by an hour, so we had an extra hour in the bar next door, and most of the people in the bar were also waiting to go in to watch, to see Dean and Jerry. So I did actually have a nice chat, or at least we had a nice chat for about an hour with some of the students there, but different age group altogether. Most of the people certainly at the Usher Hall were like half my age, probably more, even more than that,
Yeah, well, there's a lot of interest with younger people in this matter, a lot. So, which is very encouraging because it demonstrates how the youth have an interest in social justice issues. And I'm actually seeing quite a groundswell of younger people taking an active role in the future decision making for nations, and which is encouraging. And also, just on that note, to once again encourage all people in Wisconsin to get out and vote on April the 2nd, participate in democracy, not just sit back and look at it. That's a message that is really important in my view. So.
It is. I think in particular for some of us that grew up with a lot of news stories from South Africa during the apartheid era. The relief of the ability to be able to vote, and the black South Africans were like, well, why would you not vote? They couldn't understand why turnouts in certainly here in the UK, and it sounds like even worse in parts of America, turnout of 30-40%. What on earth is going on there?
That's just seriously, that is just a malaise that will come back and bite you on the bum, right? You have to participate. You need to make your politicians and other elected officials accountable to everyone, not just their little sector that support them no matter what. This is the thing about democracy. If you don't participate, you actually cause it to unravel. Everyone, people say, well, look, what's my little vote? Well, if you have a discussion in your little vote may be a discussion in a family about the matters that are relevant at the time. That can be discussion amongst other families. That can be discussions that turn into discussions in community groups, and suddenly your opinion starts to have a snowballing or domino type effect to have a conversation. As Dean Strang says, talk about it, right? You need to do that. And you have the right in a democracy to do that, and do that safely and respectfully. But when you don't do it, it's actually worse. It's not even just not in participation. You actually empower the minority, and the politicians just focusing on a minority group of people.
Yeah. Well, I think we actually ascertained. I think in the end of it, we came up with the dude's Erekose's favourite car, didn't we? It was a pink Ford. It was an automatic with a left-hand drive. It was a pickup with a 1.1 litre engine, etc., etc. The interesting thing here in Scotland recently, within the last 5 or 6 years, maybe longer. How long has the Scottish Parliament been going? About 10 years. We now have a form of proportional representation.
Oh, that's good. We have that in Australia.
Yeah, and the only interesting thing was that I remember when it first started. One of my pupils that I went to, the father of the pupils, was involved in the council up in the Lothians. Yeah. And he was telling me that he had the job, the unenviable task of going round all of the old folks' homes in the area to explain how the new voting system would work. And, and every single one of them said to him, look, Jim, why do you bother telling us? We know how to, don't tell us how to suck eggs. We know how to vote. We've been doing voting since before you were born. And the end result was there was something like 250,000 void votes that were worthless because of the way that they'd filled them in. So it was it might take a while for the effect of this proportional representation to work, but it does in a way it does give you this option of choosing your car that has got more options, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, I think probably what you really mean, Paul, is the preferential voting rather than proportional representation.
Yes, preferential. You put your 1, 2, 3.
Correct, and that's what we have in Australia. So it's quite often that the candidate that gets the most number of votes still doesn't get a majority of votes, right?
Yes.
And so the preferential system enables people to give their second preference if their first preference wasn't successful. And hopefully out of that you end up with a candidate that is more supported than any other candidate. And typically that's what happens. But we also have, I'm not sure whether you do too, but we have proportional representation, which means that any one candidate represents, give or take, the same number of people. So in Australia, it's approximately, the ratio is one candidate in a federal election, that's the national election, one candidate per 100,000 population.
Right.
So you have these situations where electoral boundaries alter reasonably regularly because of changing population fluctuations, where more people move into a district and the numbers get larger, and then they have to rejig the boundaries so they stick to the 100,000 per candidate benchmark. But then you get, like, for example, as there are very remote parts of Australia, like in Western Australia, there's an electorate or a voting area that sort of covers like the equivalent of about a quarter of Europe, right? So it starts off, I forget where it starts from, but a little north of Perth and sort of runs all the way up to the top of Western Australia, which is like a vast area. So because there's not that many people live there, so that candidate has to represent a physically very large area. Yep. But in the end, people get a fair go. In other words, everyone gets a candidate. I think it works pretty well. So, yeah.
Good stuff. Well, I'm going to let you go and enjoy your trip down to see Steve again, and get some breakfast before you go.
Yeah, get some.
Stay warm.
I will. It's starting to warm up a little here. It's in the night. It's still down to freezing temperatures, though. It's like they use Fahrenheit system measurement here, so in the low 30s, sometimes in the 20s at night. During the day, it's been around the high 30s, 40s. But I understand the things changing. Even though we're in spring already, by this time next week it'll be 50s and 60s apparently. So
right,
just as I'm going. So All right,
the chill will lift.
Okay, good to talk to you, Paul. And
you. So look forward to seeing you. Well, obviously we'll chat before then, but we'll see you in Sydney.
Yeah, get a cup of coffee for me, mate. When I come out, I'll make it nice and hot.
I know most of these airports, they have nice bar areas that you can get a drink all day long.
Yeah, that's probably true. I don't know about the arrivals area, but certainly up in the departures area, that's true. So,
but not the arrivals. Okay.
So, but anyway, I'm sure your radar for a nice drink will find wherever it is.
Yeah. I also I did check out the boarding passes, and apparently I can print them off anywhere between 48 hours and 90 minutes beforehand. Right. So I think I'll be printing them off. Let's see, 48 hours. Am I past the 48 hours? I think I am.
What time?
No, 7 o'clock on Monday that I go out, so I can from about 7 o'clock today. So I'll probably print them off tomorrow.
Okay.
And if not, as you said, I can just go to the airport and they will physically print them off there. But it's always better to have them while you're done. Saves a bit of time.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, mate. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Yep.
and we'll be speaking soon. All the best to everyone as well.
Yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in, and catch you again soon.
Okay, bye now.
Cheers. Yeah, bye for now.
Bye.